examining the impact that the referenda in Scotland and Wales may have on the country as a whole. For richer or poorer continues the debate tomorrow night on BBC Two, slightly later than originally planned at 9:20.
The birth of the universe.
David Dimbleby introduces a live Panorama special.
Good evening and welcome to the Old Royal High School in Edinburgh, where we're going to be debating tonight the government's proposals for devolution. At the general election, Labour promised to offer Scotland and Wales a chance to say whether they wanted a degree of self-government, with power being devolved from Westminster to Cardiff and Edinburgh. And tomorrow, Scotland will vote on whether it wants its own parliament, and in a separate vote, whether it wants that parliament to have the power to increase or reduce the basic rate of tax. A week later, Wales will also have a referendum on whether it wants a Welsh Assembly, though without the fundraising powers on offer to Scotland. England at this stage has no say in all this, although the United Kingdom, of course, as a whole, will feel the effect of it if it comes true. Now tonight, in this building, which was once intended to house Scotland's Parliament, we'll debate the key issues at stake with witnesses and with an audience drawn from all three countries and from both sides of the arguments equally. To argue the case in favour of change, the Scottish lawyer and Labour MP Des Browne, and from Wales, Mary James of the Yes for Wales campaign. Arguing against, Donald Findlay, Scottish QC of the Think Twice campaign, and the former Secretary of State for Scotland and also a lawyer, Sir Malcolm Rifkind. And they're going to be examining witnesses on the key points, whether devolution will work and whether it will mean that the United Kingdom is a better governed state as a result. We start by having a 2-minute summary of the case for both sides. Des Browne on the yes side first. Des Browne.
Thank you. Good evening. The proposals in this white paper for a Scottish Parliament and in this white paper for a Welsh Assembly are not about breaking up the United Kingdom. They're about bringing government closer to the people and allowing government in different parts of the United Kingdom to better reflect the people's priorities. This modernisation of our constitution starts from an understanding that diversity already exists within the United Kingdom. Scotland has a separate legal system, health service and a distinctive education system, all overseen by a single government department, the Scottish Office. What is missing is democratic accountability. A modern Scottish Parliament will give the Scottish people the right to have decisions about matters affecting their everyday lives taken here in Scotland by a Parliament elected by them. It will be a Parliament elected by a more representative system of proportional representation and with limited tax-varying powers. This divine power is to allow the voters of Scotland through the ballot box to choose their own spending priorities. They should trust themselves to use that power wisely. Taxes will only go up if at a subsequent Scottish election the Scottish people vote for them to do so. Historically, Wales has had closer links with other parts of the United Kingdom. Despite this, the people of Wales want an assembly which will make the growing tier of Welsh government directly accountable to them. They want to bring the unelected costly quangos under democratic control. Wales wants a strong voice. A modern Welsh assembly will meet that aspiration. Politicians are often seen as too remote. These proposals will bring the government closer to the people, replacing bureaucracy with democracy. The British Constitution has been evolving for centuries. These proposals mark our next step forward.
Ms. Browne, thank you very much. And now, Donald Findlay, your 2 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am a Scot, and I'm proud of my country as you are of yours. This country has for nigh on 300 years prospered as part of a strong United Kingdom. I oppose devolution to Scotland because I am a Scot and I believe it will be wrong for my country. I also resent, as you should resent, the allegations that have been made from those of them who are pro-devolution, that it is patriotic to be in favour, and anti-Scottish to be against. I need no lessons in patriotism. I believe in trusting the people to trust themselves, not the politicians. There will be elections. There will be manifestos. And when those elections are over, the politicians will go into their assemblies and use all the powers that are available to them, regardless of the promises made before the election. Is there anything new in that concept? The powers that they will have. I speak not for the Conservative Party, I speak for Scots who are against devolution, but the powers will be there, and they will be there to be used. The power to increase income tax, the power to increase domestic taxation, locally and in terms of business. The power to marginalise this country, and particularly the power which will be used by the SNP and others to drive us down the road to separatism. These are the essential reasons why we will be arguing tonight that these proposals are fundamentally bad.
Well, now we come to the first of our arguments, which is the argument that the people of Scotland and Wales have a right to control their own destiny, the democratic case for devolution. It's going to be put forward by our first witness, the actress, best known for her role in the BBC television series Rabsy Nesbitt, but also a long-standing campaigner for a Scottish Parliament, Elaine C. Smith. And she'll be questioned first by Mary James.
Hello, Elaine. Good evening.
Good evening.
Can I ask you, first of all, why do you think the people of Scotland are discontented at the moment? What are they looking for from their government?
I think they're discontent for many, many reasons, but particularly over the last 20 years, that feeling of anything that they actually voted on or believed in as a nation, that sense of community, that sense that we have a different set of values from what may be going on in the rest of the country, has been completely ignored. And a terrible, terrible feeling of frustration amongst ordinary Scots at that all their wishes, all their beliefs are simply cast aside in things like the poll tax, VAT on fuel, everything that was completely against anything that Scots had voted for. And I think we now see this as a real chance to bring accountability and responsibility back home to Scotland, and that is hugely important to Scots. And it doesn't make you any less patriotic to actually want a government and a parliament in your own country.
Don't lose us time on this. Can I ask you briefly now to finish, as the token woman amongst the advocates, to the token woman amongst the witnesses, what's in it for women? How will there be improvements in the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly for women, very briefly?
Well, I think if you look certainly at the benches in Westminster as far as Scottish women are concerned, and I'm sure Welsh women, they are very, very poorly represented. I think one of the reasons that women don't go into Parliament is that, particularly when I've been to Westminster, it just seems like a glorified gentleman's club. And that there is a real chance for women in Scotland to take part in the political process, and the fact that they actually may be able to work proper working hours, and that there may actually even be a creche in it. That would be quite a revolutionary thing.
I must stop you there and throw you to Malcolm Rifkind.
That wasn't very nice.
It's an invitation that neither of us would want to refuse. But can I ask you?
You're a strong man to catch me, Malcolm. Never mind.
I take that in the spirit it's offered. Can I ask you, do you consider yourself to be a nationalist, or do you wish Scotland to remain part of the United Kingdom?
First of all, I consider myself to be a Democrat. Yes, I may believe in nationalism. I may believe in, I'm attempting to, thank you very much. I do believe in independence, as you believe in staying within the Union. But the most important thing to me is that the democratic wishes of the people of Scotland are met.
Now, can I ask you on that? Can I ask you on that very point?
No, wait a minute, let me finish on that. Because I actually think that at the end of the day, what matters is how the people of Scotland vote. And if the people of Scotland want independence, they'll get it. If they don't, we won't.
Yes, but Mr. Browne, when he introduced the case for devolution, said it was a way of preventing the breakup of the United Kingdom. You actually want the breakup of the United Kingdom, and yet you're voting for these proposals.
No, I want what the Scottish people want.
But you've said yourself you want independence.
On my own, and I will fight for that. And gladly in a parliament, will you take your seat, Mr. Rifkind? We will fight, I'm sure, across that
parliament. And you see a Scottish parliament as a step towards breaking up the United Kingdom?
No, I do not. I see a Scottish parliament. I see a Scottish parliament as an inevitable step for democracy in Scotland.
Do you accept
and that is what is important.
Yes. But you're answering a question that wasn't put to you. Is it not the case that the nationalists want to support the establishment of a Scottish parliament for reasons quite different to what the Labour Party say?
I think it's very,
you see it as a means of breaking up the United Kingdom. They claim it will preserve it. I know it's a difficult concept for the Conservatives to actually take on board. That there may be actually a bit of altruism in this as well. I think it is quite liberating for the people of Scotland to see Jim Wallace and Alex Salmond and Donald Dewar on the same platform. Yes, they will argue, of course they will, because that's what democracy is about. But it is liberating that we are getting away from that adversarial type of politics that everyone is so tired of. Two guys in suits fighting across a chamber. And as you say that you believe, as you say you wish to advance the democratic rights of people to control their own destiny,
yes, I do.
Do you think it will be right under these proposals that over 100 Scottish and Welsh Labour MPs in the House of Commons will continue to vote on English issues when English members of Parliament can no longer influence these matters in Scotland?
A yes or no answer to that.
A yes or no answer, you're asked to give.
A yes or no.
Is it fair? Is it fair?
Yes, actually I do think it's fair.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed.
Now, let's come to the proposals themselves. Devolution was last on offer in 1979 when both Scotland and Wales failed to achieve the majority that was required in favour. So what is better about these proposals this time round? How do they differ from the way Scotland and Wales are governed at present, with a powerful Secretary of State with a voice in Cabinet who effectively runs the country and runs its budget? Jim Wallace is the leader of the Scottish Liberal Democrats, and he's questioned on these proposals by Des Browne.
Good evening, Mr. Wallace.
Good evening, Mr. Browne.
This programme is going out to a UK-wide audience. Could you explain to the people watching why, in your view, we need to change and modernise the way we govern ourselves?
Well, I do think we need a modernised constitution. We must have one of the most antiquated and centralised constitutions in the whole of the democratic world. And me, as a Scottish Member of Parliament, I get far fewer opportunities to question ministers with departmental responsibilities on issues such as health, education, transport, as my English counterparts do. Take, for example, in Wales, where the last Conservative government in the last Parliament suspended standing orders to put an artificial Tory majority on a bill dealing with the Welsh language. And I believe that if you actually take decision-making closer to the people, you're more likely to get good decisions, better decisions, and not decisions like the poll tax or water quangos or nursery vouchers, as we got by a Conservative government against the wish of the majority of Scottish MPs.
Thank you very much for that very full answer. Can we move on to another subject? The Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly will both be elected by a more proportional system. Why is that important in your view?
Well, I think it is important. It's a very important difference from what was on offer in 1979. And it does mean that there will not be domination by one party from one part of Scotland. Even on Labour's high water mark to the 1st of May, it would not have had a majority in the Scottish Parliament. That gives reassurance to the peripheral areas of Scotland, which have understandable concerns about the population imbalance in Scotland. It will also mean that there will have to be a culture of cooperation in the Scottish Parliament. I think that can change the whole culture of politics in Britain. And it will also mean then that the Parliament will go out and encourage participation by ordinary citizens. And I think we're going to see a much healthier democratic political system in Scotland as a result of these proposals.
Okay, Des Browne, thank you very much. Donald Findlay.
Jim, in the course of your campaigning, we know that the Liberal Party are in favour of federalism. Why have you been truculently silent on how you propose to use this Assembly to achieve a federal state?
Oh, I'm not at all ashamed or afraid to talk about our aspirations for federalism. I think it is the natural end point, and I think Malcolm Rifkind himself in the past indeed along with other Scottish
yes, we know that.
Tory
The
Scottish
question
secretaries
was,
said
how
that
are you going to use the Assembly to achieve that?
Yeah. But the proposals which are contained in this white paper, substantially worked out between the Labour Party, the Scottish Liberal Democrats and a whole range of Scottish civic opinion in the Constitutional Convention, are quite consistent with ultimately moving on to a federal solution. And what is in here will represent the better government of Scotland. That's why I support it.
You don't want to answer my question. We'll try another one. You, I take it, will argue that Orkney and Shetland will be better represented in an Edinburgh-based assembly than at Westminster. No disrespect to your own abilities.
I certainly do, yes.
Why was it then that when Strathclyde Region, modest as ever, Jim, why was it that Strathclyde Region, when it was in its heyday, found that people from the periphery of Strathclyde and from the islands had nothing in common with the centre of that region and felt they were unrepresented?
Well, I'm not sure that was necessarily the case. I sometimes think that probably the roads were probably better served sometimes from Strathclyde than they were by the old Argyll County Council. But what we're arguing for, Donald, is that if you do bring government closer to the people, then you are more likely to get decent decisions. It is a Conservative government at Westminster that took away from local authorities in Scotland water and sewerage services, that took away from most local authorities in Scotland further education. And what we're wanting to see is returning power to people in their nation and in their communities.
Donald, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jim Wallace. So let's move on to the constitutional points. If it comes about, the plan to give Scotland a parliament and Wales an assembly will of course be a major change to the United Kingdom's political system, and the opponents of it say that it will cause confusion and even ultimately prove unworkable. Michael Ancram is our next witness. He's a Conservative Constitutional Affairs spokesman and speaks on this in the House of Commons, and he's questioned by his former colleague, Malcolm Rifkind.
Michael Ancram, can you first tell us why you believe that Scotland itself would suffer from these proposals with regard to Scotland's influence and power?
I think I can actually take Scotland and Wales together on this, and first of all look at the roles of the Secretary of State. At the moment, both Scotland and Wales have a very powerful voice in the Cabinet, backed up by departmental responsibilities in both Scotland and Wales, bringing clout to their arguments to get extra resources for Scotland and Wales, and as we've seen over these last few years, in fact, getting more than the formula provides. Now, what the proposals in both the white papers is setting out is to remove from both Secretaries of States all their powers and all their responsibilities, to leave them effectively as messenger boys between the Assembly in Wales and the Parliament in Scotland and the Westminster Government. And then we're told by the proponents of devolution that this is going to give Wales and Scotland a stronger voice in the United Kingdom. It's rubbish.
Is it not the case that the Liberal Party have acknowledged that there could be no real role for a Scottish Secretary and a Welsh Secretary after devolution, and then the Labour Party nevertheless claim that this office is going to continue?
Yes, that's correct. And for once, if I may say, the Liberals are realists, because those of us who've been in government know that the strength you bring to your discussions around a table in government depends upon the powers and responsibilities you have. And if you have no clout, you're not listened to, and that job is worthless. And that's why Scotland and Wales will suffer within the United Kingdom if these proposals are carried through.
Could I ask you about the European dimension, because it's suggested in the White Paper that somehow Scotland and Wales would benefit from devolved parliaments?
Well, I find this quite extraordinary, because at the moment Scottish and Welsh ministers, as a matter of right, are part of the United Kingdom delegations that make representations of the Council of Ministers. If you actually look at the White Paper, in Wales all there is going to be is a consultative process with the United Kingdom government. In Scotland there's going to be a consultative process, and by invitation a Scottish minister might be asked to go to Europe. At the moment they have a right, they're being offered just an invitation in return, and I think that's doing Scotland and Wales down.
Michael Ancram. Michael Ancram, just before we go on, you mentioned the formula, and the formula that provides money for Scotland and Wales. Could you very briefly, for people who don't understand that, explain what it is that you say and why you think it is Scotland and Wales have an advantage?
Yes, there is a formula by which the allocations to Scotland and Wales are calculated, and they depend on a per capita allocation. It's called the Barnett formula. At the moment, as the Barnett formula is actually trying to equalise provision across the United Kingdom, it's been up to the two Secretaries of State to argue that there is extra need for both Scotland and Wales and to get extra money. But if there are no Secretaries of State, or they have no clout, they will not get it.
Is your argument that Scotland and Wales have been getting extra money as a result of having Secretaries of State? Is that your argument?
Within the United Kingdom, Scotland and Wales' needs have been recognised, and they have been getting more per head than they get in England. If they begin to move away and have their own assemblies, the arguments for that are very much diminished.
Okay. Mary James.
Mr. Ancram, you made the point just now that the Secretary of State you thought would be becoming less powerful with the establishment of a Welsh Assembly and a Scottish Parliament. But don't you recognise that the point is that it's the people of Wales and the people of Scotland that should be exercising those powers, not just two individual people?
But we're talking about the arguments, even after devolution, if it were to happen, that would still need to take place within the Westminster government, where the main allocations are going to be made. I remember Wales arguing for years until 1966 to have a Secretary of State. Now they're being asked effectively to remove any powers or responsibilities from that Secretary of State and send him without any clothes into the Cabinet chamber to argue for them. That's no way of serving Wales.
Well, to what extent do you think that your party's views like this on constitutional reform contributed to the loss of all your seats in Scotland and all your seats in Wales in the election?
Takes up time.
Sorry,
I make no bones about the fact that on May the 1st we had a crushing defeat, but if you actually look at the figures, the defeat was rather deeper in England, where devolution was not an issue.
Fine, you've cost your seat. Mr. Ancram, you've contributed. You've contributed in. Sorry, you're losing the time on this. I just want one very brief answer then, as time has gone. You contributed to the establishment or the policy to establish a devolved parliament in Northern Ireland, but you're denying the need for a devolved assembly in Wales and a devolved parliament in Scotland. Do you really think that there is a different argument?
What we were doing in Northern Ireland was dealing with a situation where there had been a devolved parliament, very much of the sort being offered for Scotland, which had failed and had to be suspended. We were trying to find some way of dealing with that situation.
And that won't lead to the breakup of the United Kingdom in the way you argue it will in Wales and Scotland?
Well, I think you have to be very careful, particularly at this moment, how you talk about Northern Ireland, where there are very sensitive talks taking place.
All right, we have to stop you there.
But I will say this to you, that it is common between both parties, the Conservative and the Labour, that we wish the people of Northern Ireland to have the right to decide whether they remain within the United Kingdom.
Michael Ancram, thank you very much. Well, Michael Ancram mentioned the way that money is divided between England, Wales and Scotland. Now, under the proposals being voted on tomorrow, the Scottish Parliament, if the referendum says yes, would have the power to vary the rate of the basic rate of income tax by up to 3 pence in the pound. That's the next topic we're going to deal with. Richard Mowbray is Associate Dean of Business Studies at Paisley University, and he'll be questioned on the consequences of the tax provisions by Donald Findlay.
Richard, can I try to get somebody at least to give me a straight answer tonight? What do you see as being the potential dangers for Scotland of the tax-raising power being used by an assembly?
Well, I think the dangers impose on individuals and on companies. For those individuals who have to pay the tax fully, in other words, their income falls fully within the basic rate of income tax band, they will have to cough up each another £665. For a family with two working parents, it's over 1,300. So there goes the family holiday that particular year. But of course there are impacts too on industry. It will drive up costs as workers attempt to redress the balance to restore their income, make Scottish firms less competitive vis-à-vis the rest of the United Kingdom.
We're not only talking, of course, about the power to vary, as they describe it, income tax, but the Assembly would have the power also to deal with local taxation and local taxation on business. Now, if that unified business rate was somehow altered in Scotland adversely to the Scottish interest, what effect would that have on business up here?
Briefly, if you would.
It would, of course, impede business. If there is a different uniform business rate in Scotland from in England, then of course there's an advantage to England vis-à-vis Scotland. But as you know, the White Paper also proposes that the whole level of local taxation, the whole structure of local taxation, can be determined by the Parliament. So if they were to go back to the old rating system in Scotland, local authorities could vary the business rate and the domestic rate. And there's considerable evidence over the last 30 years that the large cities, which have been the highest rated, have lost an enormous number of manufacturing jobs compared with the surrounding smaller towns and rural areas.
All right,
that could happen again.
Thank you very much, Richard Mowbray. Des Browne, your witness.
Good evening, Mr. Mowbray. You're introduced here in one capacity, but you're a man of parts, so Perhaps
Indeed,
you could just explain to the audience some other things about you. I mean, not only are you the dean of the vice dean of the business school, but you were once a member of the Labour Party, weren't you?
I was indeed.
You were once a member of the SDP, weren't you?
I was.
You were once a member of the Liberal Democrats,
Indeed.
weren't you? And now you're a member of the Conservative Party.
Indeed.
Yeah. And you're also a leading light. You're also a leading light in the Think Twice campaign.
Indeed.
Is that right?
Indeed.
Right. Now, I mean, the whole issue here is.
Would you like to talk about tax?
Excuse me. Yeah. The whole issue here, as far as you're concerned,
Can you keep quiet in the audience? Otherwise,
the
we
whole
can't
issue
hear.
here is one of trust. You don't trust the Scottish people in a democratic situation to make a decision about the politicians that they want, to deliver to them the policies that they want in relation to income tax. Isn't that what it's about?
I don't. It's not a question of trusting the Scottish people. I think the question is the evidence shows that where Labour local authorities in Scotland have regularly raised taxes, as they all have done, it's never had any real impact on their power in Scottish local government. Now, why on earth should that be different in a Scottish Parliament? The answer, of course, is proportional representation. But I have to point out that the two other parties with whom Labour is in cahoots on this matter equally wish to raise taxes. Jim Wallace's Liberal Democrats would happily raise it for education, despite the fact we spend more on education per head of the population than Germany and Japan.
But the SNP
would happily raise tax to give benefits
the
to
referendum
feckless
is not about
16-year-olds.
the taxation policies of individual parties. It's about giving the Scottish people the power to make these decisions. The election later on will come, and you can fight that election then. Why don't you trust the Scottish people to make decisions? Why don't you trust the Scottish people, Mr Mowbray, to make decisions about the policies they want and about the tax policies they want, when in the 1st of May of this year, they cleared out of Scotland politicians whose tax policies they did not like?
I do trust the people.
A brief answer, if you would.
I do trust the people, but I believe it's the people's right to know the possible consequences of voting for higher taxes. So, it is undemocratic to stop that.
Richard Mowbray, thank you very much. So, moving from taxation to the wider aspects of economy and business as a whole, perhaps it was being dealt with there too, and the effect of setting up a parliament and an assembly. A slightly different view now from Browne Morgan. Browne Morgan was until May chief economist for the Welsh Development Agency. He now is head of the small business unit at Cardiff Business School, and on this issue he's questioned by Mary James.
Hi, Brian. Brian, you worked for several years in the Welsh Development Agency. In what way do you think the work of the agency will be improved or strengthened or maybe even weakened by the establishment of a Welsh Assembly?
Well, I can confirm that the Welsh Development Agency was very successful in its attempts to bring inward investment into Wales. And I can also say that they were as successful as the Scottish enterprise has been in Scotland. They've done very well, but we also have to remember that there is still a 17% prosperity gap between Wales and the rest of the UK. That is, GDP per head in Wales is 17% below that in the UK. And that's been the case now for about 20 years. So we can't say that everything in the garden is still very rosy. There are still great problems in Wales that have to be addressed. And I have to say that the reason I think they haven't been addressed is that we haven't managed to develop a coherent economic strategy, a long-term economic strategy in Wales. And that's a failure, I think, I put down to the Welsh office and the fact that we've been buffeted by successive English Secretaries of State over the last few years, and we've gone absolutely nowhere. And what we need now is to put some democratic control over the Welsh office and draw out a coherent economic strategy that will actually address these very important issues.
Right, thank you for that very comprehensive
I think your
reply.
time's up, I'm afraid. Malcolm Rifkind.
Mr Morgan, why do you think it is that the business community in Wales and in Scotland are overwhelmingly in disagreement with you as to the benefits of devolution?
Well, I don't think that is the case, actually, Malcolm, because if you look at the CBI in Wales, for example, they've just come out and said that they like the ideas of actually discussing business policy with them. They've actually come out very neutral on this issue. And the point is that when you try to develop the economy in the way that I've just suggested, it will be good for business.
And you know that every opinion poll of business views in both Wales and Scotland has shown overwhelmingly opposition to an evolved assembly. Would you like to see the Welsh Assembly have the same tax-raising powers proposed for the Scottish Parliament?
Well, I think different regions, can go along this route at different paces.
Does that mean yes or no?
Well, what it means is that in various parts of Europe, for example, they've awarded tax-raising powers in Catalonia,
Do you mean
but not
yes
in
or
other
no?
areas. But
do you think the Welsh Assembly should have tax-raising powers?
I don't think we need them in Wales, no.
Do you think they need them in Scotland?
I think that's a matter for the Scottish people to decide.
And tell me.
And I'm sure that when they do decide that question, they'll use that power judiciously and fairly.
As someone interested in the interests of business and of jobs, do you wish to see a Welsh Assembly and a Scottish Parliament having the power to end the uniform business rate and giving back to local councils the ability to charge much higher council tax in Wales or in Scotland than elsewhere in the United Kingdom?
Well, it's, you know...
Yes or no?
It's not all negative, of course. What I would like to see is that they have the power...
But would you like them to have that power?
I would like them to see... I would like to see them have the power to help businesses to develop their innovation capacities and everything else. And I'm not at all convinced... I'm not at all convinced that we, in Wales, need that power.
Don't you think that Wales has benefited from a uniform business rate with the rest of the United Kingdom?
We've certainly benefited from some of the stabilities that are going on in the
answer is yes, isn't it?
In the taxes. And I think as long as taxes are kept stable, it doesn't matter that much.
Stable as between Wales and England and Scotland, and not higher taxes in one compared to the other. Thank you very much.
Stability would be a good thing, yes. Okay.
Thank you, Brian Morgan. And now we turn to devolution in more general terms. It may be new in the United Kingdom. It's practiced in other parts of the world. What does their experience teach us, if anything? Simon Jenkins is a writer and a regular columnist for The Times, and he's questioned first by Des Browne.
Thank you. How does the way in which we govern the diverse regions of the United Kingdom compare with the way in which regions of other modern democratic countries are governed, Mr. Jenkins?
Well, I used to think, or we used to think, that Britain was a very developed democracy. As soon as you look overseas, and very few people in this debate do, you see how primitive we are now in this respect. Right across Europe, there's been a sweeping change in the direction of devolution for the past 20 years. Scandinavia, Germany, Italy, Spain, even France, the most centralist country in Europe once, all these countries have moved in the direction of devolution. None of them are proposing to go back. And they've done so for two reasons. One is that entities, political entities within these countries, not necessarily separatist, want devolution. They literally want it. It's a democratic requirement, irrespective of what business thinks or whatever. But secondly, having moved down that path, they found it more efficient. They have found that it is not true that taxes go up. It is not true that business flees. It is not true that bureaucracy overwhelms subordinate entities. The fact is that devolution works everywhere else. The time has come to try it here.
What cultural benefits have accrued to the regions of other countries as a result of the regional governments in Europe?
I think the most interesting lesson we draw is that where you have groups like, in this union, the Scots and the Welsh and the Northern Irish, saying they want something, in other words, exercising a sort of subsidiary self-determination, the mechanism, the constitutional mechanisms in these other countries allows them to have it. This has meant that Spain, for instance, has not fallen apart. The opposite of what's being claimed here. Spain is held together as a very successful union, very difficult, but very successful union, because of devolution. The same has happened in Italy. Most remarkably, I think, it's happened in France, where they realized, even the centralist French, realized they couldn't go on with the sort of democratic centralism that you only got in the Soviet Union. They had to devolve, and they've done so with great success. It's very popular, much more popular than central government.
Simon Jenkins, thank you. Could you hold on, and you'll be cross-questioned by Donald Findlay.
Mr. Jenkins, did I understand you to say, talking of devolution, the time has come to try it here? Did I understand you to say that?
Yes.
What is the country that the people here tonight represent?
The United Kingdom.
The United Kingdom. If you're trusting the people then, why don't you put the question of devolution to the whole of the United Kingdom and not just two parts of it?
I would be very happy to.
So the people who are only prepared to put it to Scotland and Wales clearly don't trust all of the people in the United Kingdom. Have I got that right?
There are two
that
ways.
Would seem to follow.
There are two ways of responding to any requirement for self-determination. If you have a group of people within any entity, any political entity, who feel so passionately about it that they either want a new dispensation or they'll leave, then you have to deal with them. I think in this case you have quite clearly in Scotland and Wales a situation in which self-determination of some sort is called for. It does not require the breakup of the union. In many ways, as I said before, it's the way of securing the union. But it is something that I think the people within these areas have some right of self-determination of, irrespective necessarily of what the whole Union feels.
And do we understand that in Spain, where there was some devolution, what happened there was that eventually the whole country became involved in devolution? They didn't simply pick one part of it and hand it down there.
No, but most interestingly in Spain...
Oh, but that's right, isn't it?
Yes, but most interestingly in Spain, if I may say so, they had different sorts of devolution for different parts of Spain, which was appropriate. We do not need to be
no
Unitarian
devolution
about
for
it.
the largest part of the country, which we call England. No devolution at all. How can that be trusting the people?
It doesn't seem to require it. They don't want it.
It's not trusting the people.
Thank you very much, Simon Jenkins. Donald Findlay, just before we go on, could I just ask you, in view of the question you put, is it your view that if England didn't want devolution for Scotland and Wales, Scotland and Wales shouldn't be allowed it, even if an overwhelming majority of the Scots and the Welsh wanted it?
Well, it's my view that if you're going to put the question of devolution with the consequences of breaking up the Union, you put it to the whole country and put proposals to the whole country, not just bits of it.
And therefore, sorry, to clarify, and therefore if a majority of the English voted against, you would say finished with it, to end the end of it?
If a majority of any part votes for it, then you have to respect the wishes of the people, but you must give them that opportunity. The government's not prepared to trust the people.
Let's move on to the question of the consequences, then, of devolution. Some people say that the real danger of these proposals is that they won't stop at devolution, that conflicts will arise between the competing parts of the United Kingdom, and that will have disastrous results. Dr. Tim Williams is one of those who holds this view, and he's questioned first by Malcolm Rifkind.
Dr. Williams, I think you're a member of the Labour Party.
I am indeed, yes.
And I think we all know that members of the Labour Party have come under very great pressure, indeed sometimes threats, not to speak out against the government's devolution proposal.
Yes, I do think it's strange that we're heading for a new democracy and we're not allowed to express our opinions in the Labour Party on this matter. But that being said...
Why, despite all this pressure, have you felt it appropriate to speak out as clearly and as unambiguously as you have?
Because I do think that it's important for people to realise that, in a sense, the love that has not spoken its name in this debate is the fact that the Celts have had a tremendously successful experience within Britain, that Britain is defensible as one of the most successful multinational entities that has ever been created. And I do think it's extremely illiberal and not at all modern to want to go backwards to something that will cause disruption rather than forward within the confines of the United Kingdom, which has been extremely successful for us. It's a moral structure. You tinker with it at your peril.
What do you believe would be the consequences for the United Kingdom, for the people of Wales as well as Scotland and England, if devolution goes ahead?
Look, there were never proposals that were more calculated to cause discord between the Celts and the English. We're heading for a half-baked, unstable form of federalism in which there are no stabilising mechanisms like a constitutional court between the various parts of the United Kingdom. Resentment against the English will build up because there will be less funding coming from the English, who have been a very generous people, let it be said. And indeed they have. And I cannot see as a Celt, a Welsh speaker, how it's progressive to disrupt something that has been of financial benefit to us, and indeed has allowed us to express our nationality with tremendous generosity in a way that is not available to many other minorities in the Western world. I can tell you that.
Thank you very much.
Malcolm Rifkind, thank you. Mary James.
Shmai, Tim.
Shmai.
Tim, you've argued on various occasions that you think that the Welsh Assembly proposals would lead to some form of independence or slippery slope or other colourful expressions. Remind me, what percentage of the vote in Wales did Plaid Cymru get at the last election?
It got 10%, but it will
10%.
It gets 20% in local government and gets 17% in European
at the last election.
That is not the mechanism, Mary.
It's
Can
okay,
I say that is not
question.
the mechanism?
It's okay, we heard.
MPs will become nationalists in a Welsh Assembly on day one.
What percentage?
Just answer the question.
What percentage, therefore?
10%.
It's all right, we used to. What percentage did the pro-devolution parties get then?
70% in the last...
Right. So, and you're really arguing that the 10% will be able to dominate the majority
Mary, on day one,
without any form of...
on day one after devolution, all those people who have been campaigning for devolution will say these proposals are not enough. It'll be a mixture of the nationalism on the one hand and the self-interest of politicians in Cardiff on the other, driving us on to conflict with the English. Whatever it isn't progressive.
You've been arguing that we should have faith in our fellow Celts, but you're not arguing there that we should trust the people of Wales.
I'm saying that unscrupulous politicians will build on the legitimate concerns that the Welsh will have. Let me tell you, if the Welsh public funding will go down, there will be conflict with the English, and that will be whipped up by politicians in a Welsh Assembly. And they won't have to be nationalists to do that.
One more question, if I may, before you carry on the speech. The campaign that you're working with in Wales is called Just Say No. You're not offering any alternative to the people of Wales. You're saying, just say no to this form of progress.
If you're trying to stop something which you think will be disastrous for your people, it looks as though it's negative. It's not. It's the most positive thing in the world.
So you're happy with the status quo, are you?
That's not a negative thing, Mary. Look, I believe in restoring local government. I believe, by the way, in restoring the powers of Parliament, which have been much depleted over the last 20 years. That would be real democracy in this country.
So it's not really just say no. It is another form of some kind of constitutional reform that you're really advocating.
We're saying stop and think. And we're saying that the best way to regulate relations between the Celts and the English is the parliamentary system, which has been a benefit to us.
Dr. Tim Williams, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Among those urging a yes vote in Scotland to devolution tomorrow and next week in Wales are some who are quite open about hoping it won't end with devolution but will lead inexorably to independence. The Scottish National Party leader, Alex Salmond, wants an independent Scotland. How does he square this with Des Browne, who's now going to question him? Des Browne.
Good evening, Alex. Let's cut to the chase. Do you believe that devolution will inevitably lead to independence?
Yeah, well, I'm for independence. This is not a great secret in Scotland, incidentally. I certainly don't think independence is inevitable. I think independence, and I hope it will come, but it can only come not by a back door, but only if and when a majority of the people of Scotland vote for independence. Now, Des, you believe in devolution. You take a different view as to where Scotland should go. What we both have in common, of course, is that we trust the people of Scotland to make that decision. It's called democracy.
Exactly. Can we move on to the other thorny issue of this debate? Why does a parliament need tax-varying powers? I mean, surely the SNP would prefer a weak parliament in Scotland, as weak a parliament as possible.
No, I think we should have as many powers as possible. Now, earlier on it was said we should look internationally, and I think there's one statistic that we should bear in mind. Of the top 10 countries in the world in terms of the OECD, the most prosperous countries in the world, 7 out of these 10 have devolved parliaments with fiscal powers, and the other 3 are small, independent European countries. I think we should have the vision to look at what's working internationally.
In case anybody's still in doubt about your position, Alec, I mean, why have the SNP taken such a positive view of a devolution policy which it opposed at the general election?
Because I've always argued that devolution was better than nothing, better than the status quo, and the fundamental job of a national party is to do what's in the best interests of Scotland, and I think this is in the best interests of Scotland in the referendum tomorrow.
Des Browne, thank you very much. Donald Findlay.
Alec, your current marriage partner, the Secretary of State, says that the Parliament, as he calls it, will strengthen the Union. Why is he wrong? Is he misleading the people, or are you just betraying the principles that you stand for by joining with them for the time being?
No, neither of these things, Donald. we take a different view. We have a disagreement about what we think is the best solution constitutionally for the people of Scotland.
But
what we will allow to happen, Donald, and what you won't. Well, let me finish the point. What we will allow to happen and what you won't is we'll trust the people of Scotland to make that decision. That's the one thing that you're unable or unwilling to do, trust the people.
When you say we will trust the people of Scotland, I take it that you mean for the time being yourselves and the Labour Party as well as the Rebels.
No,
yes?
I'm saying what's characterised the Yes campaign is all of the forces in the Yes campaign, which is all but one of the MPs elected on the 1st of May by the Scottish people. All of us are willing to put our fate in the hands of the Scottish people in terms of what we think is the best solution constitutionally for the country. What characterised your campaign, apart from it being a totally Tory campaign, is it's negative and scaremongering and doesn't have one single positive idea.
I understand the point you make, Alex. But it's also true, is it not, that you try to have as part of the...
hear you for the applause.
It's part of the... It's all right, I'm accustomed to being applauded. You'll get used to it. I understand that you tried to put down a question to ensure that part of the referendum would be related to the question of independence.
Yes, I did.
And the Labour Party wouldn't support that.
Yes, and the Tory Party... Well, wait a minute, Donald.
Doesn't that show they don't trust the people?
Yes, well, the Labour Party didn't support it. The Tory Party abstained. which I think is further reinforcement of the confusion within the No campaign.
Alec, as you know, I don't speak for the Tory party, but doesn't that show, just quite simply,
You're
doesn't
a former
that show
Tory candidate,
the
Donald.
Labour Party, the present government, don't trust the people of Scotland?
No,
Why not put it to them?
The present government decided to test opinion on its devolution proposals. I put forward an amendment in the House of Commons to have independence on the ballot paper. Now, when that was turned down by both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, I had a choice. Either I could take my ball and go home, or I could try to do my best for the Scottish people. I chose to do the best thing for the Scottish people, and I think I was right to do so.
Alex Salmond, thank you very much. Well, tomorrow Scotland votes on all this, and Wales in a week's time. We've heard a lot about the proposals and some of the objections to them. So how does Labour's leading proponent of devolution, the man who actually wrote the White Paper for Scotland, reply to the points that have been raised? Donald Dewar, the Secretary of State for Scotland. Question first of all by Mary James.
Secretary of State, can you tell us why you think the people of Scotland should be voting yes, yes tomorrow?
Scotland has always had a very distinct and special place within the United Kingdom. That's recognised and evidenced by the fact that we have separate Scottish legislation on health, on housing, on education, a whole range of important domestic matters. But that is in Westminster. And it means very often that the initiation of that legislation, the control of it, is in the hands of politicians of whatever party who don't command majority support within Scotland. That leads to instability, to cynicism. I believe if you accept there is a need for separate legislation in these fields, then it is an unanswerable argument that there is a democratic case for, in fact, putting that under the control of Scottish electors who will elect politicians who will respond to and reflect their point of view.
If, by some strange chance, there is a no vote tomorrow, will there ever be a chance again for the Scottish people to have a chance to make this decision?
Well, I think it's certainly off the agenda for a very long time. I think tomorrow is a unique opportunity. We're offering a sensible, rational division of responsibility between Westminster and Scotland. The areas that are devolved have been put under democratic control, the 12,000 civil servants in the Scottish office, my own responsibilities. And at the same time, we're leaving macroeconomics, fiscal affairs, regulation on the United Kingdom basis, foreign affairs, defence with Westminster. I think it's logical. I think it's got eternal strength. I think it will give stability. And if we pass that up, then it'll certainly be perhaps another 20 years before that is back on the agenda. And that's not the mood of Scotland. We want to modernise our constitution. I think Scotland wants change. I think this scheme is right for the times and right for Scotland.
Mary James, thank you very much. Thank you. Malcolm Rifkind.
If you trust the Scottish people, why did you refuse to allow the referendum to be held after Parliament had considered the legislation, so that the people would know what they were being asked to vote for?
Well, actually, it was your fault, in a sense, Sir Malcolm, because you and Michael Forsyth and a very large number of very influential people in the government said there is no consent in Scotland, there is no wish for change. You would be wrong, in fact, to bring forward a bill and to legislate unless you have established that there is consent. We decided to practice what we preach. We took the consent issue on head-on, and we said we'll have a referendum to establish whether there's that consent or not. Now, I don't know whether it will be there, Malcolm, but we'll know tomorrow, and I'm pretty confident.
That is profoundly unconvincing. You could quite easily have said that the general election, which you won so handsomely in Scotland, gave you that basic consent. The question, therefore, was whether the public would want the kind of devolution that Parliament is going to pass. Now, you know that when Parliament passes this legislation, by that time the Scottish public will have no opportunity to express any verdict on what might be voted
The White Paper,
for.
I think, very explicitly, in a very accessible way, sets out a scheme. And we want the judgment of the people of Scotland and of Wales on that. And indeed, Michael Forsyth and many other people urged this upon us. So I think it's a little ungracious of you now to turn around and complain, simply perhaps because you're very uneasy about the prospects tomorrow.
And do you think it is fair, and do you, as an eminently fair man, think it's fair that over 100 Scottish and Welsh Labour MPs, if your proposals are implemented, will be voting on health and housing and education in England, with English MPs under your government's proposals having no longer any opportunity to influence these matters?
We've tried to make a fair and balanced package.
You haven't answered the question. Is it fair?
Let me answer my own way. We've tackled many of the difficult issues, like the proportional representation issue. We've looked at representation at Westminster by Scotland. As you know, we've made changes. I think people will see it balanced. But the real point is this, that what makes for frustration and cynicism is when MPs become ministers and come to Scotland as ministers, with perhaps 10, 15, 20% support and no more in Scotland, and misguided, no doubt sincerely, but introduce the poll tax, Introduce the internal market in the health service.
Introduce the right of council tenants to buy their homes.
Stand in the way of what the people of Scotland want. Then you are, in fact, setting up the pressures and the tensions that are a danger to the future of the United Kingdom.
Malcolm Rifkind, I'm sorry, your time is up.
That's a danger you should be aware of.
Thank you, Sir Malcolm. Thank you, Secretary of State. So now a chance for those of you who've been listening patiently to all that to have a quick say about it. Could I first of all, anybody from England here who'd like to say something? Yes, you, sir.
Yes, just given the Prime Minister's commitment to no new taxes, I'd like to know if anyone has any suggestions as to what Scottish services will be cut to pay for the Scottish Parliament.
Donald Dewar, you answer that?
Yeah, with great pleasure. What we are saying is that we pool our resources, we allocate public expenditure according to an agreed formula. I hope that we'll be able to move ahead. At the moment, we're suffering from the unsafe state of the public finances we've inherited from the Conservative Party. But what we want, and let me make this very clear, what we want is a prudent and a proper approach to the problems of Scotland. And what I find very strange is repeatedly the Donald Findlays, and I'm sorry to say the Malcolm Rifkinds of this world, make the assumption that if power is with Westminster, we are safe. If power passes to Scotland, we are unsafe and irresponsible.
His question was about about money. How is it going to be paid for?
Well, the money will be the block and formula system which we are familiar with. Well, people laugh. But we've just been told by all these Tories week in, week out, that Scotland does very well out of the system that we are going to preserve. It seems rather strange then that it becomes a disadvantage and a weakness in our scheme. It's a good scheme, it's stable, but what we want is fiscal responsibility and the flexibility.
Are you from England too? No. Anybody else from England want to put a question? Yes, sir. You.
I think many of us just south of the border, particularly in the northeast of England, are looking with great interest to see how a devolved parliament works. And if it works well, which I believe it will, then it will increase the call inside England for local assemblies such as a Northern Assembly in the northeast.
So you're hoping for a yes all the way.
To encourage the vote in England.
Yes, sir, you.
Thank you, David. I'd like to ask the Secretary of State why it should be that my own profession should lose £420 a year if this tartan tax is imposed upon us, when my sister, who lives and works in Cardiff and is getting married shortly to a Welshman...
Yeah, save the family background. Just get to the point.
Why should she, who is doing exactly the same job, get to keep that money in her pocket?
Well, I suppose you might say that because you've got a higher community tax in one part of the country, of local taxation, then you'll expect everyone simply to move away. It's not like that. Taxation is a matter of using revenue for good social purposes, whether it be in the health service or in education. And what we've said in the Labour Party is that we want a prudent approach. We've had a pledge from Tony Blair that there will be no increase in direct income tax over the 5 years of his term. And he's very properly said that that will be extended to the whole United Kingdom, including Scotland and the new Parliament, if we win and we have our way. That should reassure you, if I may say so. But I think a little bit of vision is required.
This isn't meant to be a question and answer session with the Secretary of State, so let's have some points that you yourselves feel. The woman at the very back there, yes.
Thank you very much. My colleague and I, Carisby, we started the No campaign in Wales because we didn't agree with the Welsh Assembly, with the structure of the Welsh Assembly. Right, I want power, more power devolved to Wales, but I want it through the Welsh Office, the 2,000 civil servants who have done their jobs since 1964, and also, very, very important, to local authorities who know the problems of the people in the area they live. And I think it's disgusting that it hasn't been thought out.
There's somebody, do you disagree with her, or do you take the same view?
She didn't start the No campaign, she is a No campaign. And she's a No campaign. She's the No campaign because her and her Tory friends would prefer to see an English Tory closing Welsh hospitals than the Welsh Assembly building them. And what we want the Welsh Assembly for, is to create not just jobs in Wales, but careers for people in Wales. We want to see the sort of country we're proud to give forward to our children. And what we've heard from the No campaign is scare stories and no facts. I'm looking forward to a Welsh Assembly to build my country, not destroy it.
Your no is your badge.
Yes, and I'm proud to be no. And I have to say to the Secretary of State for Scotland...
Don't ask him a question, because he's answered 3 already, or 2. Just make your point. No, make your point.
Very quickly then, he has said quite clearly in their white paper that they are going to raise taxes. They've also said they're going to borrow money. Scotland is up to its eyes in hawk to the local authorities. All of them, 90% of them, are Labour councils. We're going to have a Labour government up to our eyes in hawk and we can't pay the debt.
Okay. Yes, you.
I think tomorrow's vote has got nothing to do with the better governance of Scotland. It's all about the Labour Party wanting their cake and being able to eat it. They want to win power at Westminster on the Westminster stage, but they also never again want to be in the position where they're the biggest party in Scotland, but they're inept and they cannot fight Thatcherism and Majorism. And they're playing a very dangerous game with the SNP and the Nationalists. They're trying to appease them. They're bedfellows at the moment. The knives will be in each other's backs if this ever comes off on statute. It's not.
You, sir.
I'd like to ask Michael Ancram a question.
Yeah, okay, go on.
This is a statement that he made some time ago when he was the chairman of the Thistle Group. We are convinced that a measure of devolution to Scotland of power over their domestic affairs is essential in every meaningful sense except the exercise of control over their internal affairs. Scotland is a country. To apply the current jargon of region is inaccurate. How can he possibly say today that he's gone so far from that position?
You said again. That was 29 years ago.
And in the interval, I've studied very carefully what the implications of that concept would be to the people of Scotland, and I've discovered that it would damage the interests of Scotland, and that is why, since 1976, I have campaigned and voted no.
Okay. The woman in the front here.
The message that's coming over from the No-No campaign is that we are a nation of numpties, that is, stupid people who will elect numpties as MPs, who will make stupid and dangerous decisions. And on behalf of the 60-odd% of people who have indicated that they're going to vote yes, yes tomorrow, I deeply resent being called a numpty.
Okay. Somebody else from Wales. You from Wales? Yes. Yes.
I'm from Wales. I think we've seen a Labour government in since May the 1st now, who are governing by abdication. They've abdicated their control over interest rates to the Bank of England. They're abdicating their control in Wales and in Scotland. And when it all goes horribly wrong, they're going to say, well, it's not the Labour Party, it's the Welsh Assembly, or the Scottish Parliament, or the Bank of England.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop and ask for final closing. Oh, I have a little bit more time. I'll take one more. Yes, you. Sorry, yes.
What they will elect to these assemblies and parliaments are has-beens, couldn't-bees, never-beens, and wouldn't-tops.
I just like one other thing. Can I hear from an SNP? Can I hear from an SNP supporter? We haven't heard. Yes, sir, please.
Donald Findlay said in his opening remarks that a parliament would be bad for Scotland. Yet the facts are that Scotland is unique in all the world. We are the only country which has its own legal system, its own education system, and its own system of local government, and doesn't have a parliament at all. Why can he not trust the people of Scotland to have their own parliament?
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to, our time is inevitably running out. I'm going to have to go on to the final statements, and rather briefly. And first of all, Donald Findlay, if you could watch the lights carefully and sum up your position.
And the Welsh can govern themselves. There's no doubt about that. But you're not being offered a parliament. Real power, sovereignty will stay in London. You're being offered a devolved body with powers that will be handed down to it that can be taken from it, with all the power to vary tax, locally, income tax. That's what you're being asked to do, is to endorse power to politicians. Now you have seen the danger of giving power to politicians. You have a marriage made in hell by a Secretary of State who doesn't trust the people, by a Scottish National Party who wants to use it to drive us down the road to independence, by a Liberal Party who wants to use it to take us down the road to federalism. They are not interested in Scotland. They are interested in achieving their own ends, and they should not be allowed to get away with it. I say to the people of Scotland, and I say to the people of Wales, when you come to vote, vote not with your heart but with your head. Be proud of your country, and that country is the United Kingdom of England, Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland.
Donald Findlay. Donald Findlay, thank you very much. Des Browne.
The choice that faces the people of Scotland and Wales is simple. Do they succumb to the old fears, many of which we've heard here tonight, or do we embrace a new future? That new future involves bringing government closer to the people, establishing democratic institutions that give the people of Scotland and Wales a greater say in the decisions that affect their lives. The background to that choice is simple. The status quo is not an option. The Conservatives, the only party to argue for the status quo, were left without a single member of Parliament in either Scotland or Wales. It's time to bring government closer to the people. These proposals are right for Scotland, they're right for Wales, but most importantly, they are right for the United Kingdom.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to thank Donald Findlay and Des Browne and Mary James and Sir Malcolm Rifkind for the protagonists in that, and all our witnesses. It brings us to the end of our debate. In under 8 hours' time, the polls are going to open in Scotland, and a week later in Wales. And for those of you who have a vote in this, and for the many more watching who don't, I hope we've helped at least to clarify something of what's at stake. From the old Royal High School in Edinburgh, good night.